So, Ron, Happy New Year, and how are you doing over there in California?
Happy New Year to you too, and let's hope this is a better one. And California is under an extreme pandemic with a crazy governor, and you can go buy clothing, but you can't eat anywhere. I'm not complaining about it because things are bad, but it's crazy. It's a crazy life here.
First thing we should start off with, because we played the song right before the interview. So, talk to me the process of making the Go Go Power Rangers theme song and how you got that role and doing that song.
I had been at Saban Entertainment. I started there in 1989, and I had been primarily a songwriter and in 80s bands prior to that. And then I got a job at Saban Engineering because I was a mixing engineer, and so I was working with the other composers, and I really never thought about going into scoring anything, or especially kids stuff. And it took about 3 years for me. I kept submitting stuff, and the producers there would say, this is how you score. You need to break yourself of the songwriting format. So I had maybe a couple of little teeny tiny things prior to Power Rangers. And then one night they came in and they said, there'd been one other that I remember version of it that they were going to call Metal Man. And I don't think I ever wrote anything for it. I might have, and then it just went away. So in '92, they came in with one night. I worked at nights there, and they said we need a theme for a show called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and maybe use the word "go" because Saban had a lot of luck and made a ton of money off of a show called Inspector Gadget, where that theme was "Go Gadget Go." So I was actually working on something else that night and wanted to get this theme done as quickly as possible. And I knew they didn't like fast stuff, and I knew they didn't like rock. So I just banged out a theme. I did what I wanted to. So from the time they walked in to the time it was completed, it was 2.5 hours. Then the next day they called and they said, Fox loves it. And I said, great, who should we get to sing it? And they said, you're the singer. They love it. And that was it. It was done. It was just done. That was the final mix. Never did anything else to it. And it ended up in the show and took, 3 weeks for the show to explode out here in the States. And I've been busy ever since. So it was a very lucky night.
Was that your first time that you sang on anything?
I had done guide vocals for other singers, meaning I would write a song and just lead them on what to do. Put my vocal on, the real singer would do it. So yeah, that's the first thing I ever officially sang on.
So you probably were, I'd assume, very surprised that they said, yeah, we like your voice.
More than you know. And it was hard, and all those songs that followed up were hard to do because I sing wrong. I gargle ice cold Diet Pepsi. That was the thing to tighten up my chords. And then, so I gargle that, and then I sing. I scream through my throat. So, and all the vocals are layered. So by the time I'd be done with any song, or at least halfway through it, my sinuses were already starting to expand in my head, and my vision was getting blurry. But I just kept going because that's the way I would get that sound.
Not gonna lie, Ron, I actually remember you saying in an interview that you used the Diet Pepsi to do the voice. And I was trying to do like this song for a friend of mine for them to sing, but I couldn't hit the note. So I decided, you know what, forget it. I'm getting an ice cold Pepsi. And I did that. I gargled it, thinking, right, nothing's gonna happen. And it worked!
Yeah, it extends your range for a limited period of time, but you're able to hit that note. It causes your chords to just tighten up a little bit, and you can hit that higher note. It is the damnedest thing. Plus, it felt good because my throat was getting kind of raw from screaming. And I wasn't screaming at a loud volume. It's rather subdued. It's just a matter of getting that throat and head voice.
So you did a lot of tunes for the Power Rangers. What would have been your like favorite you did? Any least favorites?
There really are no least favorites, but I think "We Need a Hero" has always been my favorite because it's I wrote it kind of with a political view because it seemed like, other than this show, the kids in the world and everybody else. I mean, there was no more leaders and no more heroes. All that had died away. You know, in the everything was so big. I wasn't born yet, but in the 50s, there were people that were just looked up to that set really good examples. By the 90s, I saw that all starting to fall apart. So that's what that song's about. So it's always been my favorite, and unfortunately, things have gotten progressively worse since then.
Has that been like a thing that you've put into your music, like just sort of, especially like the Power Rangers? Did you just sort of write whatever the hell you felt like?
Yeah, and they thought I was writing about the show, but I was writing about just daily experiences. Or there's a song called "I Know a Place" where the enemy will never find us. It's actually about a bar that was around the corner from Saban Entertainment that all of us in post-production would. We kind of had a goal. We'd start at 6 p.m. and we tried to get in there for about a half hour and have a couple beers around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. So that was about "I Know a Place Where They Won't Find Us." And it worked great for fight scenes.
Actually, yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it worked great. And then Tenga, which it was about these weird birds, is actually a takeoff on all my meetings with Haim Saban. Because, you know, the guy had a lot going on. So when you have a meeting, when he's done, he would just go, "Thank you, bye-bye." And it always sounded like "Tenga, bye-bye." So I turned it into "Tenga, bye-bye." So it's a little tip of the hat to Haim Saban, telling me the meeting is over.
Did he ever like notice that? Did he ever say to you?
Nah. Now, I never really saw those guys that much. So, no, that didn't happen. And I don't know if I would have told him because it may have pissed him off, which would have been bad.
One thing I'd like to ask you, were you ever aware of like one of the songs you did, "Hope for the World"? Was that ever like a hit? I'll tell you why I'm asking that afterwards.
It was never a hit. I think that one was written for the movie. Or was
It
that
was written
I Will
for
Win?
Turbo.
Yeah, it was written for Turbo. Well, I think, you know what? I don't remember the exact inspiration behind that. Other than it seemed like the show was so big. Maybe I was having a moment where I really felt that there was a chance that there would be some heroes and leaders again. I can't remember the specific story behind that. But what's your part? What's your story?
Well, I decided to play that track to several people, like, around your age or a little younger. And
Right.
every single one of them said, "I heard that on the radio at one point."
I'm not surprised. I was sequestered pretty much when I was at Saban because of the amount of work I was doing. And I have no bad feelings about this. But they kept me locked away. And even if the Fox or networks, the network out here which was huge, if those execs were in the building, they'd make sure I wasn't around. And their fear was, it was wrong, but it was justified because they didn't want any producer wandering into the studio and go, "Hey, we're working on another show. Would you like to do that?" and steal me away from Saban. So I'd learned a lot of stuff. Like there was a dance remix, basically a drum loop under the original theme that Simon Cowell
I was
put
going
on
to
it.
ask you that, actually.
And I didn't know this till 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody told me, and then one of the executives chimed into the message board and said, "Yeah, I have the gold record on the wall." And I just went, I didn't even know. I had no idea that stuff happened. It really, really kept me in the dark about a lot. And it's very different from today. Today you Google stuff, or, you know, there's so much communication. But in 1993, 94, it wasn't as easy to do at all. You had American Online here in the States that you dialed into, and you were lucky if you could get to a message board.
That's very interesting, this, because I was actually going to ask you about that, the Simon Cowell dance version of Power Rangers. You heard that? Did you? What did you think of it?
I said, I just thought I could put a drum. I mean, it's a purchased drum loop under the track. It's not like remixers have become. That's for sure. It wasn't very, but it worked at the time. But when I found that out a few years ago, I guess, and that started his career in music. So good for him. You're welcome, Simon.
So, a lot of those songs you did as well for the Power Rangers, none of them were guitar, right? They were all keyboard. How did you get that sound?
That was out of necessity because I was spending a lot of time learning the score stuff. I love guitars, can't play guitar, so I developed a sound that would go through a single rack synthesizer unit called a Proteus One, and I modified a guitar patch in that, and then ran it through a rack mounted amp that I think Korg made. I can't remember the model number. And I just hit magic, total luck, got a great sound, saved those presets, and that became the sound I used on everything. And it fooled everybody. I remember when in 2000 I was hanging out with Eddie Van Halen for quite a bit, and it fooled him. He wanted me to show him how to play it on the guitar. He had learned it in the 90s for his son Woofy, because Woofy said, "Dad, play this." And he's like, it took me like a week to figure out your fingering. And he goes, "Show me how you played it." And there was a grand piano in the room, and I went over and played it. And I said, I did it on a keyboard. And he thought that was very funny. I think he was a little pissed, but it was pretty funny.
So you spent some time with Eddie Van Halen. So how was he? Because he only passed recently.
Yeah, he was a crazy genius. And when I was hanging with him, he was kind of in a dark period, and he was in that transition between being an international superstar and realizing that things had slowed down. It's funny, he was incredibly humble, and yet he had a huge ego. So he was torn between those two things because he really was mainly humble. So he would come to, I had a band with my ex-wife, a band called Fisher, and he and his then wife, Valerie Bertinelli, would show up, and Eddie would want a roadie for me, which was kind of weird. But he was trying to I could see he was fighting to get back to the roots of when he started and find the joy in playing again. And luckily, he was able to get a bit of that back when his son wanted to revive Van Halen. So, but it was crazy. The stories were insane. They're locked in here forever. Most of them will never come out my mouth, but man, what a life. I mean, when he passed away, I just went, would I trade living to be 90 for his life and dying at whatever he was, 67? And I thought, yeah, I would trade that time. What an adventure.
And speaking a little bit about the band you did, Fisher, talk to me a little bit about that, because you were in a movie with that band, right?
Oh, not in. We got soundtrack deals with it, and a lot of television stuff, and we did the big talk shows out here. So I had met, ironically, at the same time I started at Saban, I'd met this gal, Kathy Fisher, and a friend hooked us up and said, "You should hear her sing." COVID. And she sang a few notes, and I just went, let's work together. So we ended up in a relationship about 93 and got married in 95, but just always kept getting very close to getting a record deal but couldn't do it. And then around 1997, 98, MP3s were becoming a big thing online. And I figured, we'd gotten a cut in a film called Great Expectations. I think it was the end title cut. And then we were able to do a thing called the Lilith Fair out here, which Sarah McLachlan ran. So we went and did some of those shows, drove all over the country. It was a ton of fun. And then realized that we had a fan base from this one song on the soundtrack called Breakable. So I decided we would do the Kiss of Death, which it really was considered the Kiss of Death back then. We're going to do our own CD release. And that essentially meant that you sucked and weren't good enough to get a record deal. So I went ahead and did it, and I put a couple of those songs up on a site called mp3.com. And I remember the first day we got 50 downloads, and I went, wow, that's great. And then as the week went on, or 2 weeks went on, it went to 100 a day, 500 a day, 600 a day, 1,000, 8,000, 10,000 downloads a day, and suddenly we were sitting on top of their pop charts with this piano vocal ballad. So the news was all over this new MP3 craze, and so CNN and Fox News and Time Magazine, everybody ended up coming to us and doing interviews, and then the record companies started calling, and it was great because I was on with the presidents or the VPs of all the labels, and I was telling them what I wanted and passing, literally on the phone with Atlantic Records saying, we pass. And they would go, well, let's talk again Monday. I'd say, we pass. We're not interested in you. And finally did a deal with Universal and had this piano vocal song got leaked to a station down in San Diego, California, and just became number one on call-ins, which means nobody paid to have that happen. It was legit, and everybody was calling in to hear this song. It kind of spread across the country, and we were charting at Top 40 radio with this thing. So kind of prior to Adele, we were the first piano vocal ballad to be charting at Top 40 radio. And then the problem, though, with Universal was distribution of the CD. There was no way, really, there was no iTunes yet, and the distribution was awful. So it was better for me to terminate that deal after one record, which everybody thought was crazy, but it was way more advantageous to do that and not go through that hell again. Because when you're in that machine, it's just frustrating as hell. You become pretty powerless. So I didn't like that. So it was better to leave that, but it was a great adventure, and we did great afterwards as an indie artist and did a couple small label deals, and then moved into EDM and had a bunch of stuff with Paul Van Dyke and Armin van Buuren and this guy George Acosta, which was brilliant. And it was great. It was like being famous from home.
Huh?
It was weird.
Ron, you said like 5 million new things I never heard about that.
It's been a unique career. I've never loved. It was fun, but I've never loved touring because it's so much work. It's great when you're U2 and you have everybody taking care of everything down here. Like, I want a tea, and a tea just shows up. But until you're that big, it's just brutal. It's brutally hard. And so kind of being famous from home is a lot more fun.
You did a couple of other scores, specifically ones that stood out to me was SpongeBob and Batman and the Dragon Ball. So what was that like?
Dragon Ball Z. Well, Dragon Ball Z, I didn't know until, because this is more my fault. So after I left Saban in 95, I was scoring stuff at home for them with a VHS player and a 19-inch tube TV and a Macintosh and one keyboard. And one day they said, we have this show that we do not give a damn about called Dragon Ball Z. Do whatever you want. The theme's written. I didn't write the theme. They said, just score it and send it back, and whatever you want to do is fine. So I did the first 2 seasons that way, and it wasn't until years later that I found out it was a big cult classic. So I'm thrilled that I was involved with that. And that was a ton of fun. Batman, Warner Brothers, scoring stuff, action, super fun. Spongebob, they would call me when they needed rock or orchestral stuff. It was a friend of mine was music editor on the show. So that was a blast. That show was so fun, truly fun to work on.
I'd imagine it would have been.
Yeah.
And you're doing a video game score at the moment, is that right? How's that going?
Yeah. Another freaky thing. 3 years ago, my ex, Kathy Fisher, gets a message on Facebook saying would love a big fan of Fisher EDM, would love to use a couple of tracks in a game we're developing, and is Ron interested in doing the score? So I spoke to the guy. This is literally one guy hires a few people. It's one guy creating this entirely massive RPG game, and it is truly spectacular. He's a computer genius. You know, he quit school at 12 and was, because he had got a job designing software for architects. He writes stuff for banks and Wall Street and the city of LA, and he's also making this game. And when he wants to relax and get off his computer, he builds himself, he and his wife, electric motorcycles with a 250-mile range, and he's building them in his garage for fun. So he's just one of these wild geniuses, and so he wanted kind of a cyberpunk score. So I started off with that very dark stuff. He loved it. I loved what he was doing, and we've been working on it ever since. And we were waiting to see... Oh, my computer. Oh, there I am. I went to screensaver. Didn't stop. So we were waiting to see what was going to happen. We were thinking of, well, he more than I, but of releasing it this year. But we were waiting for that Cyberpunk 2077 to get out of the way. And he knew well in advance that it was probably going to be a complete flop. And it came out December 10th, and apparently is a disaster. I don't know. Are you aware of this game? Yeah.
I'm quite aware. The reviews are lower than so many other considered bad games because it was in development for like 8 years, and then they just sort of... The company just sort of flunked what they were... They pushed like a particular... And when you push like a... And even in like music and a bit in movies and everything, when you push for a particular day for it to be released, there's going to be problems. And with games, it just becomes bigger. Because I remember doing a bit of programming. You rushed in programming, it was going to flunk.
Yeah. It's a shame. I do feel bad for them. But, you know, I've watched some of the videos of it. It's still, the game itself is not even close to what the guy I'm working with is developing. So it was called The Nothing, and then we ran into problems with that title. So he retitled it The Next World, which you can find at Facebook. He does some updates. So it's called The Next World, and the first chapter will be Nothing or The Nothing. He's deciding, and that's supposed to come out October next year, which I'm really looking forward to. And I've done about a little under 10 hours of score and probably have another couple hours of stuff I should write for it.
So how is that going? What sort of is the style you're trying to go for without spoiling the game, obviously?
Dark. I mean, I've put stuff up at SoundCloud. It's just dark, grungy, you're going to die, someone's going to kill you, you're going to kill someone, depressing, dark, you're stuck in an underworld, it's cold, it's miserable. But it's great stuff. It's so fun to write because you get to dig in and you get to use so much distortion, and just the sky's the limit as long, you know, staying within the parameters of staying out of the way of dialogue frequencies or gun frequencies, or, you know, I can take all the low end as well. So it's been a lot of fun. And after that one gets released, which it'll then be over 4 years since I started, it'll be great because there's other stuff he'll go right into. So looking forward to that. And he kind of looks like he's a trippy guy, he and his wife. It's like they're thin and they're always wearing black and they're very hip and they do like some cool jewelry. It's more than you're thinking. It's not like a goth thing. And then like they have a black M series high-end BMW and then a Audi R8 and electric motorcycles. And the house, you can say, turn the house blue and the whole inside of the house is blue. I mean, I'm a tech head, but he's at a whole different level than me. And then he's sitting in front of 6 big monitors and types 110 words a minute and just, it's ridiculous. Just crazy. It's like meeting a Steve Jobs. Just so when this is done, I mean, I think one of the biggest points for the press will be that this was done on a really reasonable budget and pretty much by one guy.
And that's just awesome.
Yeah, it's wild.
And that guy that you just what you've been saying about him, God, that sounds like a guy I want to meet once in my life just to see, see that side of him.
Yeah, all I can say is be prepared. I mean, I walked into, I'm sure I can say this. I went to go visit him a few weeks ago at his house, and there's a massive server, thin but long, like 5 feet long, sitting on the floor. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Oh, that's a Tesla server, not for Tesla, but it's a Tesla server, and that goes off. We're shipping that off to Wall Street tomorrow for some other thing I'm working on." Like, okay. I mean, you meet people, especially in Los Angeles, that talk like this, but to act, when you see the actual a $58,000 server sitting there, it's like, yeah, that's going off to Wall Street. It's actually happening. There's no other reason it would be there. He didn't buy that to, and he couldn't. He wouldn't be able to, but he didn't buy that just to impress his friends and go, yeah, it's going to Wall Street. So it's mind-boggling what this guy does.
I want to get into when you did a comeback to the Power Rangers with the SBD theme for Disney.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
It was fun. They called one day and they said, we'd like to get back to the roots of the show. And, they sent me the breakdown on the show. It's usually 2 or 3 pages that I will just look over for a second. And it's one of those situations like the others where the theme kind of just came to my head and then it was a matter of working it out. So I think it took a few days and then I sent it off. The head of music there loved it and he said, "I'll get it to the producers and get back to you." And I remember I was in visiting my mother-in-law in Pittsburgh, and they got the call and they said, "We absolutely love it. We have a note." And I was thinking, okay. And they said, "Just add some sirens." Like, piece of cake. That's easy. I can do that. And that was the SPD theme, and it was great, and people loved it. And then came Mystic Force.
Oh, this one. I don't know why they did not use that theme. I mean, it was just so good.
And it was in. It was done. They said, "We love it. It's a go." And then they called and they said, a couple of the younger producers have been listening to a lot of rap, and they've decided that this season should be rap. What do you think? Do you want to submit something? I said, and I remember I just said, I'll submit something, but it's not going to be good because it's just not the way, it's not appropriate, and I don't write rap. So I did one just kind of for fun to do it. I didn't even like it. And then they called and they said, "Well, of course, we're going with somebody else." And I said, "Okay." And then I put both of them out there like on Ranger board and said, "Well, this is what it was going to be." And I don't even think I put the rap one out. I said I did a rap one that's
you did
awful,
actually.
Which I eventually... Oh, yeah, I did. Oh.
Yeah, I listened to it. It wasn't, dreadful.
It wasn't awful. It's just if you think about, I was listening to Dr. Dre and Eminem stuff, so that's where the bar was at. So if that's them, and here's me, that's what I felt. Because whenever I finish anything, I want to make sure that it's met those standards I have. So yeah, it wasn't atrocious, but it was funny. Anyway, so that came out, and then Disney was really mad at me for putting those things out. And I said, I have every right to put them out. We have no agreement over this. So I guess it pissed some people off, but I don't care. I mean, I'm not. I'm always nice and always go with the program. But when somebody ever, I do have a problem when somebody tells me I can't do something that is perfectly within my rights to do. Now, had they said, "Could you please take them down? We're embarrassed because everybody's writing us," then this is the truth. We're embarrassed because everybody is writing and calling us idiots for not using the rock theme. I would have said, okay, I understand that. I don't want you to be embarrassed. But they tried to sick a lawyer on me, and I'm just, go ahead.
Yeah, they should have used that song. Definitely that version that you did, the rock version.
I got to be on a panel with all the people who created that show, that one, at Morphicon. And that subject came up, and I just thought it was, I looked over at them and just said, how's it feel to have had the only failed theme for this entire franchise? And then after the panel was done, they all went to the right, I went to the left. They were truly, I mean, it's weird. It's weird. You think by that point, it was 10, 12 years later, they would be able to go like, yeah, we screwed, whatever. And everybody would laugh, and that would be it. But in their head, it was still their, all these people, they still think they're Spielberg, you know? They just can't go, yeah, that didn't go well, whatever.
I think it was because, like, the reviews of Mystic Force were a bit mixed. Like, there's some people that found enjoyment of it, and then there was some people who were like, it's sort of, eh. So probably when you said that, it was like, like, they realized, oh, we didn't even have the theme song, the opening.
Yeah. Yeah, it just added on, but I felt justified in throwing salt in the wound. Plus, by that time, I did think, actually, that we would just laugh it off. But I realized how much I offended them, and but it didn't worry me. I just went, well, oops.
It sounds like something I do anyway.
You have to have a bit of an edge, I'm really had that, a lot of that original Power Ranger stuff. It came out of a lot of angst and a rough, tough childhood, and so I should have ended up in a punk band. Really, if I could front a band, I always had performance anxiety to a certain degree, and I just don't have that presence to front a band. But it would have been cool to be in a real punk band.
And why do you have the stage fright?
I don't know. I had that ever since I was a kid. I started playing when I was 3, and I had my first published work for a finger exercise book at 5.5. I don't think it was widely distributed. It was my first paid gig. But every time I had to do recitals or anything, I was overwhelmed with fear and was nauseous. And then in those 80s bands, there were literally times where I would throw up the beer I just bought. Actually, it was my one free beer. You get a free beer if you're playing at a club. I would throw it up before we'd go on stage. And that kind of hung at an acceptable level of what I could deal with. And then with the band with my ex, it kind of went away because it was so well rehearsed. I could do the entire set blindfolded. So I had no fear for a while. And then we took a break, and then we did a few things. We got called to Germany to perform one song. And I think 2010 was the last time, and it was just this weird shaking that I couldn't control. During the performance, live for the president of Germany. And I got through it just fine. But what I would do is hit chords and then I would hold them down as hard as possible on a grand piano so that you wouldn't see the shaking. It was a terrible experience. But a lot of musicians have them, and a lot that I've spoken to, they take beta blockers so that their fear doesn't cause their heart rate to go so high that they start shaking. So and so, if it's that miserable of experience, why go look for it?
Will we ever get some of the rock stuff back? Because the last one you did was "This Is the End of It." I think that was the last rock thing you did.
Right, this is the end of. Oh yeah, that you see, and then I got a lot of people were upset, like, "Oh, you cuss? How can you cuss?" I'm like, it's 100% a political song.
Yeah, I can hear that.
It was written roughly, let's see, right about 4 years ago. So it was, I just went, oh no. We're in for a really rough time in this country.
And it worked very well. I think the swearing almost added to the song for some reason.
And the other stuff will come back. I mean, inevitably another project will come up within the next 5-6 years, I'm sure, or sooner, where somebody's going to want to bring that back, because all those people who grew up with that are now becoming the movers and shakers in the business. So with any luck, they'll call me, because I can easily still do it. I never burned out doing too much. I mean, I worked like a madman, but I never burned out to a point where I'm saying, no, I can't do that now. So I'd still be able to do it.
Was there any other music that you were in as well? Any other shows that I haven't mentioned?
Oh gosh, there's been all.
Because there's this one I heard that you were in, but I wasn't sure. It was like there's a song where some people said it was Shuki, and then some people said it was you. And I heard it, and I think it's great. Did you do the theme for King Arthur and the Knights of Justice?
Oh yeah, I did King Arthur.
Jesus, that is a brilliant theme.
Yeah, I did that. And then there was some Deke shows that a lot of people like, something called Mummies Alive. People have written me a lot about that over the years. And then some weirder shows that did okay, but no one really wrote me about them. But themes I like. A show called Sushi Pack, which is just the weirdest damn theme. And I can't think of some of the others. Horseland, that's not good. But yeah, there's been a ton, and there's been sports stuff, and I guess around 35 or 40 themes. And then score just shows up in all sorts of things, everything from The Sopranos to, I'll find out later on. 9 months after it aired, it'll show up on the performance rights statement, royalties, and I'll go, oh, they used that in
whatever that
was. Not
Breaking
Bad, but yeah, whatever that was.
Have you been working actually during this whole virus thing?
Yeah, I've been for the last show I was under contract with, which was great, was a show called The Thundermans on Nickelodeon, which was pretty big here. And then that ended because some of the kids, they were aging out of it. So I went back to doing a lot of score for reality TV. I have friends that do a ton, and it's not really to picture. They just say, give us a bunch of tension cues for this. Yeah, that range from 1 to 3 minutes. So I've done a ton of that. That goes into all sorts of TV shows. Still doing that, and now getting back to next year, if we're lucky enough, things are supposed to open back up in around March. I don't think so, but I think it's going to be the end of 2021. When that opens up and production kicks in, then I'll get back. I had 2 NBC sitcoms, multicam sitcoms, pilots that were just going to shoot, and the shutdown came 2 weeks before our shoot date. So, and those have now been canceled. They're not getting even, the pilots aren't going to be done. So there'll be new stuff definitely coming. It really depends on the rest of the business. They can't really shoot much. You'll see some movies are, but I don't do movies. But television is, everybody has to be tested every few days. Somebody inevitably tests positive. Production shuts down. It's. I have a friend on one show that's come back, and they've been shut down 3 times already, and so it wrecks the flow.
So I'm guessing you just have been working from home. That's sort of...
Yeah.
Is that how you always work?
Yes. Always from home. Ever since the day I left Saban, I've had a home studio, which I've upgraded. And even when I moved here in the end of 2017, behind me was a ginormous desk with tons of rack gear. And then I started selling off the rack gear. I mean, I had been doing everything pretty much in the box, in the computer, as it was. And then got rid of the huge desk when I got rid of the rack gear and bought, this desk and the one I'm by, which you can raise and lower. I don't stand, but just moving a bit when you're playing helps. Because I had a pretty bad mountain bike accident in 2018. So just doing that and just down to these minimum setups. And I mean, I can, on this... It's a iMac Pro. I mean, that's the whole setup. And I could literally do a full orchestra or anything in the world on this now. I love it. And it's very comfortable to be focused looking forward when you're working instead of adjusting this and making notes and doing all this other bullshit. Now, it has almost every sound library, and behind it there's... stuck to the back of the iMac are a bunch of 2 terabyte SD drives. So there's a whole lot of, I think I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 terabytes of stuff just filled with library stuff. Meaning I have 10 solo violins, and I have 15 full orchestras, and I have 50 guitar libraries, all that I have to play, and all sorts of amps and all that kind of stuff. And it just is crazy where technology has taken us. It's great.
And would it just be the instruments that you'd be storing on those terabyte hard drives? Yeah. Just the instruments? Nothing else?
Just the instruments. Because you can have some that you can have... this company Spitfire Audio that I have all their stuff. One of their orchestral libraries is about 300 gig, and that covers one full string section, basses, violas, da-da-da-da-da. But if you've got 20 of those, and they average 200 to 300 gig each, and then some of the guitar libraries it's just so many libraries on that thing. And then stuff I've also collected over the years that I'll refer to and run to. I have 50 glockenspiels, but I have one that I've used for 12 years that I love the best. When I need a glockenspiel, which isn't much. And I'm constantly buying more and more effects to tweak sounds. And then new reverbs come out that are just more lush and have more body to them, and that's better for vocals or for that lead. I'm doing a lot of EDM stuff too. So for the gaming guy for another project. So, you want that big lush sound, and up comes, as I'm always looking at music sites, up comes, the latest and greatest. So I'm a complete gear whore. Well, software whore now.
So, Ron, any final words? Anything you want to say?
Well, I know it's been a rough year for all of us. So, but here we are. We're about. It's about to get better. So, don't make any mistakes now. Just hang in there a little longer. Think about all the people you've known in your life that threw a wrench in the work right before something great was going to happen. Just please stay safe out there, and maybe in 6 months we'll all be able to go to a bar again and have a drink like the old days. So that's it. Just be safe, and I know you get sick of hearing that, but we're getting close to at least this being diminished substantially.
But Ron, thank you very much for coming on the show. And
thank you very much. It's been fun, and we will meet in person someday because I've got to make it over to your country. I haven't been there yet.
Oh, do. We have nice beer.
Oh, I will. Oh, I've heard. Everybody I know that's been there didn't really want to come back. But thank you very much. It's been great.
I'm Jack Lucas Caffrey, and thank you very much for watching my interview with Ron Wasserman. If you want to hear more of me talking to Ron Wasserman, I have done another video with him where I ask him really weird, non-related questions to the Power Rangers or really even music at all. So if you want to have a little look at that, then click on the video you see on the screen now.